Hey, what's up guys? So in this video, we're going to go over the latest update for the Valentine V1 Gen2. This is the new March 2022 update, and it's firmware version 4.1028. Now, this is a pretty minor update for the V1. The main change has to do with how the detector handles alerting to new signals after you've previously muted some other signals. They've actually reduced some of the risks of potentially getting a ticket, which is really nice. And the way the V1 behaves, specifically with not just a single mute press, but actually a double mute press, is something that I wasn't even aware about. And so I spent some time actually learning how the V1 behaves, and I learned some interesting things that I definitely want to go ahead and share with you guys. And so in this video, we're going to go over the firmware updates and the changes and improvements with this new update, as well as kind of a closer look at how the V1 handles muting, because this actually is pretty important. Now, with the V1, there's actually an undocumented way to do some additional muting with the detector. If a signal pops up, you can either just press the button to mute that signal, but then you'll get alerted to some future signals to some extent with the new Bogey alert tone. But if you double press the mute button, it's actually going to do some additional muting to suppress the additional new Bogey alert tones. This new firmware update basically will now continue to suppress new X and K band alert tones, but alert you to Ka band tones. What the heck does all that mean? Well, let's actually just hop on over to the V1 real quick and we'll take a look at that. So starting off, let's just go ahead and trigger the detector to a K-band alert. Okay, and then I'm gonna just press the mute button like that, which is gonna reduce the volume. Now, if I get an additional signal like that, you'll notice for any additional signals, you're gonna hear that new Bogey alert tone, which is gonna be loud, and then it's gonna reduce the volume or essentially mute any K-band alerts. And the same is gonna apply to any Ka-band alerts too. You'll hear we get the loud new Bogey alert tones, and then it reduces the volume of the alerts themselves. So the alerts are muted, but you're going to be able to hear the new Bogey alert tones. Now, something I didn't realize about the V1 is after you mute a K-band signal like this, it's also going to be muting future Ka-band alerts too. I didn't realize this. I'm used to detectors, if you mute a K-band alert because you're in like a shopping center or whatever, if you get a Ka-band tone, I want to know about the Ka-band signal, but the V1 actually mutes that. The way it's going to work here is it's going to let you know there's a new signal by giving you that first new Bogey alert tone, and then it's going to go ahead and mute the signal itself. Now, the change here specifically with this new update is what happens if you don't just single press the mute button, but you actually double press it. Let's take a look at that. All right, so we'll go ahead and re-trigger a K-band alert. Okay, and then 1, 2. So now I've done a double press of the mute button. So now if I get an additional K-band alert, you can hear the new Bogey alert tone was also muted in addition to the alert itself. And so that new Bogey alert tone is going to be suppressed. It stays quiet. Ka-band is going to behave differently. You can hear that the new Bogey alert tone is loud to get your attention. It's unlike K-band, right? The Ka-band alert tone is going to be loud with a Bogey tone, but then the Ka-band alert itself is muted. Now, with previous versions of the firmware, the new Bogey alert tone on Ka-band would have been muted just like K-band, and especially if you're running the detector with a really low muted volume, you may not actually realize that there's a new Ka-band signal. And so with this new firmware update, they basically ensure that the new Bogey alert tone, even after a double press of the mute button, if it's a new Ka-band alert, they're going to make sure that you hear it. And that's what the real change is here with the detector. Now, something that was also kind of confusing to me is when I first started testing this, this wasn't the way the detector was behaving. And the reason is there's a setting in the detector that I'd actually changed. Let's quickly look at that next. So I've got a profile built in here called Bogey Quiet. We'll just edit this real quick. And basically what it's doing is under mute control, there's an option right here. The default is to have this setting on, Bogey lock tone loud after muting. It's basically, this is the default option to where after you mute the detector, the new Bogey alert is going to be loud, right? Well, you can turn that off if you don't want those new Bogey alert tones. So we'll go ahead and push this profile over to the V1, and you're going to see that the detector is going to behave a little bit differently now. So again, we'll start with K-band. I'm going to mute that signal, and then if I get a second signal, you can hear the new Bogey tone is going to be muted, and the same thing also for Ka-band. So you can hear that the, again, new Bogey alert tones for both K-band and Ka-band are fully muted, even though it was just a single press of the mute button. And the same is going to apply here for a double press of the mute button too. Again, with that setting turned off, it's going to keep the new Bogey alert tones quiet. That's what that feature is. And when I was testing it, I was like, why am I not hearing the new Bogey alert tones? And I forgot that I'd actually turned off that feature. The default is to have it on. Something else to mention is that this muting is going to last for 15 seconds until the primary signal disappears. And so the idea is, if in your shopping center or something, or you pass a speed sign or whatever, if you do a single press or a double press of the mute button, it's going to mute that signal and any additional signals that arise within 15 seconds after that first signal disappears. If it's been more than 15 seconds, all the muting stuff that you've done before, it's actually going to go away. Now, something that I would really like to see with the V1 is I would prefer having the ability for Ka-band tones to just alert normally, even if I've previously been muting K-band alert. I remember a situation years ago, I think I was running an LRD 950 or something at the time. I was leaving a gas station and the detector was muting just some K-band door openers, right? I was pulling out onto the road and suddenly the detector starts screaming to Ka-band as I start accelerating, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? Turns out there's an officer up ahead of me. I really want to know if there's Ka-band alerts, even if I'm in the presence of K-band alerts and I've been busy muting them, whether it's manually, automatically with an app or low-speed muting or whatever. I really want to know when there's Ka-band alerts. With the V1, it seems like the best you can do is to just have the new Bogey alert tone present, but then the Ka-band alert, unfortunately, is going to be muted too. And so that's what you're going to be relying on to know that there's a Ka-band alert in the area. If you want to really know if there's a Ka-band alert and you want the full alert, not just the new Bogey alert tone, there's no option to do that currently in the V1. I've asked why to Valentine, and they said they didn't really want to share too much about their thought process. I'm really trying to understand the thought process, and from what I understand, it seems like they're just really wanting to keep the detector quiet after you do a mute command, so not just previously, but also future alerts. I would prefer having Ka-band alerts punch through a previous K-band mute. You can have that option if you're running a third-party app like JBV1 that can force a full unmute of Ka-band after a previous mute on K-band, so that you get not only the new Bogey alert time, but also the full Ka-band signal and the ramp up and everything, right? You can do that with the app, but it's not an option that's natively built into the V1. And I didn't realize that this is actually how it'd been running for years. Always learning something, right? But it turns out with the V1, yes, by default, if you mute a K-band alert, it's also going to be muting any Ka-band alerts within 15 seconds of that K-band alert disappearing. Again, you are going to get the new Bogey alert tone on Ka-band, even if you do the double press, which is also something I didn't know about. And the new firmware update is basically going to ensure that you get that Ka-band alert, the new Bogey alert specifically, even though it's going to be muting the Ka-band signal itself. So hopefully that's clear, hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that explains it. This is definitely something that I've been trying to figure out and learn and understand, and I've been discussing it with people online, and so now that I've kind of got a handle on it, I wanted to go ahead and share that with you. Next, the other two things. These are going to be much quicker to get into. The second change has to do with some component changes due to supply chain issues. They had some issues acquiring some of the components, and so some of the newer V1 Gen2s are going to have some minor component changes inside, and this new firmware version is going to support the changes that are going to be required to support the new hardware under the hood. I don't know the details regarding what the component changes are, but generally speaking, I mean, Valentine hasn't said any details about that, so I would doubt it's going to affect performance or features or filtering or anything like that. It may be similar to what the R7 did with some of the changes and stuff, and I guess they're doing similar stuff here with the V1 Gen 2. Finally, the last change actually has to do with some of the Bluetooth communication for people who are creating third-party apps. Now, on Valentine's website, they just say that there's some firmware changes to improve app development. And as far as what those changes are, Mike DOTD on the forums actually got some great additional information that he found to share with us. And if you take a closer look, it looks like they've essentially updated the ESP library, so there's more information being sent back and forth between the Detector and any apps. And so any third-party developers, they now have some additional information that the V1 is going to be providing to them, which they can use for additional features and capabilities and stuff in their apps to then give us some additional capabilities. So like some additional information on logic modes and muting and that kind of stuff. So not stuff that most people are going to necessarily need to worry about, but for developers, it does give them some additional capabilities, and then that should translate into additional capabilities into some of the apps that we're going to see down the line. And so yeah, that's a quick run through of all the new changes and improvements here with this latest update, 4.1028. For more information about this update or any discussion, I'm going to have some additional links down in the video description to Valentine's website, discussion on the forums, etc. That way you guys can continue discussing this with fellow enthusiasts as well. And so yeah, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.